Welcome back, viewers. You are still tuned into Prime Live. I'm super excited to welcome back in person this time Gina Jacobs. Now, she is an extraordinary mental health advocate as well as an author. And in our last conversation, she was able to provide us so much of motivation, insight, and it was such an inspiring conversation. We had to bring her back to pick her brain, to talk to her about something we've all fallen victim to at more than one occasion in our life. And I'm talking about procrastination, the very thing that holds us back from reaching our full potential. So join us in today's conversation as we delve into how do we really unravel procrastination? How do we overcome it? And how do we make sure that it's not holding us back and keeping us from reaching that full potential? Good evening, Gina. Thank you so much for joining us on Prime Live.
Good evening, and thank you for having me again. It's such a pleasure to be here.
I mean, it's such a pleasure to welcome you back in person. I absolutely loved our previous conversation. So I'm so glad that we get to have you back and pick your brain on something that, we've all fallen victim to. I think if you look on social media, there's a lot of joking around about being a procrastinator, and a lot of people are very easily able to say, oh, I'm a procrastinator, and we kind of make fun of it. But at the same time, it is something we need to take quite seriously, because it is something that is going to drastically hold us back.
Absolutely.
And when it comes to procrastination, what do you feel from your experience is the reason why we always resort to procrastination, whether it comes to investing in ourselves, doing something for ourselves, or even goal setting? What are your thoughts?
I think, and this is why I thought it was quite important to have this conversation, particularly because we're talking about New Year goals and what we want to achieve in 2025 and not wanting to fall short 3 months later, is to recognize that sometimes, because of our upbringing, we put in place protection mechanisms, and procrastination is one of those protection mechanisms, because you might have a fear of performing at something, and that fear is that it will not work. There might be criticism, there might be disappointment and failure. Because of various previous experiences, and it could stem from childhood as well. And so I normally would find that people would think that they are lazy because they procrastinate, but actually procrastinators are some of the most productive people, because they will find anything and everything to do other than the thing that they are supposed to do. So they are productive. They are able to say, I was working, I was doing this, I was doing that, I was doing that, for them to have a sense of accomplishment, so that they don't feel like absolute failures in what they have not done that they were supposed to do.
I think what you're saying makes so much of sense. Instead of putting someone, or labeling someone rather, as lazy for being a procrastinator, I think you could also label them as someone who overthinks a lot.
Absolutely.
And who is either scared to fail. Exactly. Scared to fail, scared to take that first step, not brave enough to actually go for it.
Absolutely.
And take that first step. And I love that you talked about 2025. I mean, we are still in January, and a lot of people are thinking about what they would like to achieve in this new year. And procrastination can absolutely be something that can hold you back from achieving that goal, whether it's a lack of self-belief, or, like you said, whether it stems from a childhood trauma, or any kind of trauma that someone might have experienced in their life, or a fear to actually try. There is something called a constructive form of procrastination. Now, can you talk to us about what constructive procrastination is, and what is the difference between constructive procrastination as well as destructive procrastination?
You know that we love to just kind of like twist sometimes labels to make them appropriate for us. So I tend to like twist it to say delayed planning, delaying your planning, so that I can put a positive spin to the word procrastination, because it almost makes us, you could label anything as procrastination and say it's positive as opposed to negative, but not identifying, for example, let's say you need to address a colleague that you've noted is slipping in a particular way, but you don't have enough proof to show that this person, so you delay it so that you can observe and get the necessary evidence. That's different from delaying it because you are afraid of confrontation. So I do like to phrase it as delaying a particular thing in your planning. It's intentional. And I think you can procrastinate in that way, where you are waiting for something to materialize before you take a step. So you are not waiting, sitting, on your laurels. There is an intention behind putting it off. That way, we could say that there is positive procrastination.
I love the way you've put a positive spin on something that is, when you think about it off the top of your head, you think about it as something negative. But sometimes I think it's important for us to also remember that when there are delays in us achieving our goals, or there is a delay in us moving a step further, there might be a reason, and that hesitation you might have might be a good enough reason for that delay and could help you further along in the journey as well. But when it comes to procrastination, I want to also talk about the link between procrastination and imposter syndrome.
Oh, my goodness.
These two are incredibly connected, and we don't realize how interconnected they are. Can you explain a little bit more?
It's like a vicious cycle, because procrastination is based on avoidance and destructive behavior, because it will make you self-doubt. It will make you feel like you're not good enough, and therefore you feel like a fraud. And so you delay because you don't want to get into that feeling, because you've already anticipated that the outcome is going to be that you are going to be criticized and so on. And so when you even achieve certain things, sometimes if you don't have enough belief in yourself and your competencies and your value as a human being, you're going to achieve the thing and it will still not be good enough to validate you, because it is an external thing. Now you feel like a fraud. Now I feel like when I'm sitting here, that whatever is going on in my head, and whatever you say, whatever I say to you, I'm questioning, oh my goodness, does she think that was good enough? Does she think that was clever enough? Did I sound bright enough? And in the meantime, people are receiving it differently. So even as I'm sitting here, I would be thinking, did I come across as intelligent, as if I know what I'm talking about? Those are all self-doubt feelings. And I'm feeling like a fraud, even though the evidence says that I'm a master of my craft. Inside, I feel like a fraud. And that speaks to procrastination, because opportunities like you inviting me here, I might put it off indefinitely, because I've already worked out the outcome in my mind that no, she would not think that I have anything competent to say. And then I delay myself with other things, being busy with other things. But by the time I have to get to you, I have already excuse.
Wow, that is so powerful. And my reaction is this way because what you're talking about is so relatable. I think we've all been there at some point in our lives where it doesn't matter how much we have achieved. It doesn't matter how much we've done, because of these outside societal pressures that do exist, especially being in a social media generation. There is so much of outside pressure that you get, and outside of influence, like you said, outside influence, that makes you feel like nothing you're ever going to do is enough, and you never feel validated by saying, you know what, I've achieved so much. And I think the important word there is then gratitude, is to be grateful for every point that you are in your life. But I know that something our viewers are really looking forward to hearing from you this evening is, when it comes to setting our goals for 2025, what are your tips and tricks for us that we can implement into our goal setting strategies? How do we set realistic goals for the upcoming year? And how do we make sure that we don't fall into the trap of destructive procrastination?
I think a lot of us are quite aware that we are talented and we are capable. It's the will to get there. And between your capacity to perform, your capabilities, and your talent is this place of self-belief and self-empowerment. So it is very important to work on yourself first, to invest in your personal development, because you are the person that has to fuel this entire journey. It's all good and well to have plans, but somebody has to carry those plans out. And if you have not worked within yourself to get to a point whereby your validation of self and worthiness comes from inside, and you believe that you are able, the reason the desire is sitting there is because it was placed there, knowing that you are fully capable. And so it is within you that you now would bring it out. And the other thing is that our goals, because our goals are about improvement and self-development and development of other areas of our lives, they can look very big and overwhelming. And that is another reason why we procrastinate when we are overwhelmed. So the trick that I do, so for example, I was overwhelmed with the writing of Grace in the Ruins, my book, and I went from the understanding that I had to write about 1,200, 1,500 words a day at least, to 300 words. As long as I wrote something. 300 words did not feel overwhelming, because if I write 3 posts, 3 captions on TikTok, that's 300 words. It's 100 words. So I can write 100 words to what I'm intending to as my big goal. So if you get me, it's find whatever way to make your task small. As long as you're working daily on it, and the chunks are small enough to feel like, oh, I'm sitting on TikTok and I've achieved this, or I'm sitting on Facebook and I've done that. But let it be something that goes towards what you get paid for, or what fulfills your goals.
I think that's such great advice, because I think when we set a goal, especially if it's a big goal, it's difficult to be able to see yourself getting there. And it's all about taking those minute steps every day to get yourself there. And if it is overwhelming you, I think what I understand and what I took from what you said is downsizing it to what you can manage and not overwhelming yourself with too much. In closing, Gina, how can our viewers get in touch with you? How can they follow you for your content and advice? Please do share your details with us.
Thank you so much. Everywhere on social media, I am Gina, the conversationalist. And then my website has everything from my articles on mental health and wellness to how to get a hold of me, and to the books as well. And that is theconversationalist.online.
Gina, thank you so much for joining us once again. I think for me, I'm so privileged to have the opportunity to sit down with you again, and also leaving this second conversation of ours also feeling very motivated and inspired. And I feel like a lot of what you've had to say relates to a lot of what we personally experience
Absolutely.
on a day-to-day basis. And I think it can add so much value to myself as well as to our viewers at home when it comes to achieving our goals in 2025 and not falling into that trap of imposter syndrome. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I'm really, really blessed to be here.
Viewers at home, that was the brilliant and powerful Gina. I hope you enjoyed our conversation today as much as I did. And do give her a shout on her social media platforms for all her content and all her incredibly motivating content that you will see there, as well as access to her books. But do let us also know your thoughts on our social media platforms. Are you a procrastinator? And are you willing to make those minute changes to make your goals slightly easier and take those day-to-day steps? And remember, we all have the capability within us, as Gina said. But on that note, it is time for us to head over to an ad break, and we'll come right back.